Welcome, everybody, to the PhDJ Podcast. My name is Mike, and I guess I've got a special fill-in co-host this week. Let me welcome Daniel Mueller to the broadcast. Hey, Dan, how are you?
What's happening, Mike? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Let me just give everybody a little background.
Sure.
Dan is a DJ here at Elite Entertainment, as well as, I'm just going to call him a financial guru. Does that cover enough? Dan,
that's a broad enough brush. Yeah,
good,
for sure.
Okay. For those who are saying, where is Joe Bunn? Joe has corporate parties all week long. So he reached out to me last week. We had already scheduled Dan to be on this, and he just said, hey, man, can you handle this week? Because it's going to be a scheduling nightmare. So I said, no worries. So nobody think that this is Dan's attempt to replace Joe. This is a one-off, or at least that's what Joe Bunn has told me. So
I couldn't fill those shoes if I tried.
You couldn't. It would be very difficult. So welcome to the show. Thanks for being
here. Man. Thanks for having me.
So the main reason we thought about having Dan on was I happened to mention a few weeks ago in a podcast that 2020 was a bit of a step backwards for me financially, and I'm sure for almost everybody who's listening to this. And fortunately, I didn't have to dip into savings, but the biggest thing that 2020 did was I wasn't able to save for retirement like I usually do. And that apparently perked up a couple of our listeners who said, what is this saving thing you're discussing or talking about? Which made me a little concerned. So we thought about having you on, Dan, and kind of tapping into your expertise. But before we go there,
sure,
I'd like to answer a very important question, or I'd like to get an answer from you. Dan and I are fellow Howard Stern fans. So let's start off with greatest whack packer, go.
Eric the actor, 1000%.
I knew that was going to be your answer, and that kind of is the common answer. Yeah. I'm old school crackhead Bob for me. I'm a crackhead Bob fan from back in the day, and I just think he set the bar pretty high with some of his.
Although I put Eric in number 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Either one. I mean, it's fine. It might be a generational thing. I'm older than you. I've been listening longer, and for me, crackhead Bob was the.
He was the late 90s. Or was he in the 2000s?
No, I think he goes back to the 90s. I think the story was that Howard met him on the line for one of his book signings. Okay. So and not obviously the current book, but the two that he put out, I think were back in the 90s. So I think that's when Stern, being the genius he is, heard that voice. Crackhead Bob, for those of you who aren't Stern fans, had basically had a stroke because he smoked too much crack, and so he had one of those very. I'll try to be politically correct here, but one of those really hard
remember hearing Crackhead Bob in high school. It's late 90s.
So that's it. It might be a generational thing. And you had a wedding this past weekend. How was that?
I did. It was awesome. I think we're back.
Yes.
People are ready to let loose. Packed dance for the entire night. It was so fun.
Good. And by the way, for those of you out of state in New Jersey now, dance floors are reopened, and we are also maskless based on I guess you'd say the individual businesers. It's basically the governor has said, it's up to the individual business.
Up to the venue. Like the one we were at, they asked while you were setting up, you had it on, and then, when you're in the booth, you're by yourself anyway. So,
and they weren't restricting anyone on the dance.
Yeah. And speaking of Howard Stern, whenever we bring up the dance floors are back, I always think of the Benji Bronx speech at the Port Authority when he did the Kevin Bacon speech.
He did the whole speech from Kevin. That is brilliant. If anyone, I haven't seen that in a while. I got to go YouTube that. I'm sure it's on YouTube.
I think Benji, just on the Stern thing, he's probably one of the funniest guys on that show, and that thing he did was hysterical.
That was classic. He basically just took that whole speech. That's great. All right, so let's get to the point of why you are on, and let's talk about, first of all, saving specifically for retirement, and what can people who are specifically self-employed, and I think that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of Americans use their employer, not in a bad way, but they get their retirement savings through their employer. If you're self-employed, what kind of things can you use for?
So just a little background about, I guess, myself, and I work with a financial advisory group, and our specialty is tax savings and retirement savings for business owners. So typically our day-to-day is working with business owners themselves, and figuring out what's the most tax efficient way they can save for retirement and also help their employees save for retirement. So every business is different. So there's a couple different avenues you can go down. So if you're, let's say you're just like a single guy or gal running a show, running your own business, you're going to want to look at maybe an IRA. If you can save more than the $6,500 a year, you might want to look at a SEP IRA, which gets you 20% or $53,000 a year into it tax deductibly. Or you could look at a solo 401. It just depends on the business, the amount of revenue, cash flow you have, and the amount you want to put away. The benefit of doing any of these, though, is you do get a top line deduction. So you're reducing your income by whatever amount you put into the retirement plan. So helping on taxes and saving for the future.
So that always needs to be clarified for somebody like me, because I'm not very adept at financial. So when you say a top line deduction, let's say I made $50,000 last year and I put 5,000 into one of those, I'm only getting taxed on 45.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's when you say top line, it's just whatever you put in, take it right off the top, and that's what your new income would be in the eyes of the IRS.
Okay. And is there a dream percentage that somebody should look for?
So, I mean, that's a personal question. I always advise people, hey, you should try to save at least 10 to 15% of your gross income for retirement. But as a business owner, like if you could put more away and reduce your income, if you don't need it, you're just going to pay that much less in taxes and just be that much better off down the road.
And are there annual ceilings on any of those?
So it depends. Again, if let's say you're in our original situation, just a single owner, you have no employees, you're just running the show yourself. Regular IRA is $6,500 a year, or if you're over 52, it's $7,000. If you look at a SEP IRA, it's either 20% of your gross income, $3,000 less. If you go into the 401k area, I mean, sky's the limit. The 401 limit is 19.5, but my group, we can get you up to $1 million deduction using a 401 with, profit sharing, cash balance, different strategies.
Most DJs I know, that would be enough. That $1 million would be enough.
If you can do more than the million, you're doing something right.
Right. So my biggest question about retirement savings has always been, and not to be too morbid, but how long am I going to live? That is like, if you told me, and it would be kind of depressing, but if you told me now I'm going to die when I'm 70, I can retire right now because I've got enough money put away for 15 years. But that is, so is there some kind of calendar to look at or some kind of estimate to look at? How long am I going to live? And then B, what are my annual expenses? Because listen, if I get to 95, great, but I doubt I'm going to be world traveling when I'm 95. So how much money am I actually going to need? So
I wish we had a crystal ball to figure this out, because the big issue now is people are living a lot longer than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? So life expectancy is pushing out. Retirement is now, instead of, my grandfather retired, he was retired for 4 years and unfortunately passed. I think that the older generations, that was common, guys retired at 60 and they're probably no longer with us by 70. But now you're seeing folks living to 80s, 90s, 100s, and that makes you have to stretch your dollar a lot further or push retirement out a lot later. So every situation is different. But that just goes back to the original point of, hey, you should be saving 10 to 15% of your gross income, because the idea is as you progress in your career and you build your business, your bills should be coming down, right? So the mortgages are paid off, the debts are paid down. If you have kids, college is taken care of. So the idea is by retirement, whether it's 60, 65, 70, whatever it is, you have as little money going out and as much money coming in. So you could turn on income from your 401 or your IRAs. If you have permanent life insurance, you can start pulling money out of that. If you have a pension, you can start pulling money from there. So the idea is, and specifically working with a group like myself, is we have some kind of roadmap and some kind of plan in place so that we know, like, hey, when 60 is here, regardless of what's going on in the current economy, we have a plan, a roadmap, and we kind of have things taken care of and figured out. There's always going to be bumps along the way, but when you stick to your plan, things always typically work out fine.
So you just mentioned permanent life insurance.
Correct.
Is that the same as whole?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different types. Whole life is the most.
Can you get into the difference between term and whole life?
So term insurance, the best way to think about it, it's the most popular. It's what most people purchase. You're just covering a certain amount of coverage for a certain amount of time. So you're basically renting life insurance, right? So whenever a family has a kid or they buy a house, they'll get $1 million a term, and then in 20 years it goes away. All right. So the other type of insurance is permanent insurance. Now, permanent, there's a bunch of different types, but whole life is typically the most popular. And what happens with that is it's a permanent death benefit, so it's guaranteed to pay out at some point. But one of the caveats with it is you actually build what's called cash value inside of it. So if you think about it almost like a mortgage, right? You buy a house, you're paying down the debt, and you're building equity inside of your house that you can tap into. Same concept with life insurance. The nice thing about it is you're getting tax deferred growth. So you're getting a dividend typically, 4, 6, 7%, depending on the carrier. And then at some point, you can pull that money out tax-free. And it's not reportable. There's no IRS filing or anything. It is truly your money for whatever you want. And you can pull it out before retirement, during retirement, whatever. So typically what we do is we'll structure it that it's a supplement to retirement. So you can almost create like a tax-free stream of income to yourself, almost like a pension.
Yeah, I started a whole life insurance plan a number of years ago before I met you, Dan, or else I'm sure I would have set it up with you. But I meet with my financial advisor every year, and he shows me the growth of it, and it's pretty exciting. Now, Kelly and I also took out a term because that made sense also. But yeah, I encourage people to look into the difference between the two and talk to somebody like Dan. And I should have asked you this before we went on. Are you cool with some of our listeners reaching out to you if they have questions? Yeah,
I was going to say, I can share my Facebook page, or if they reach out to you personally, just, share my cell. Okay. Facebook's probably the easiest way to get me. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, even, if it's just like a consultation, just to pick my brain. I'm always happy to hop on a call.
If anybody wants to connect with Dan through Facebook, you and I obviously are friends, and you are Dan Mueller.
Yeah, Dan Mueller, NYL.
I
always
call Dan Daniel just because when Dan interviewed with us, I wanted to hire him immediately, but I said, we already have a Dan on staff, Dan Fumosa. Do you mind if I call you Daniel? And you were like, well, nobody calls me Daniel. And I'm like,
except my mother.
But we will. So yeah, I mean, I'll often slip back into Dan when I speak to you because I know that's what you prefer. But on our website, you're Daniel Mueller, just to so that.
Yeah, but if anybody wants to chat or has questions about the insurances, the retirement stuff, anything, I'm always available.
Awesome. So speaking of Facebook, you commented on one of my posts recently, and I know you were just being snarky and funny, that I'm not taking full advantage of the tax advantages as a business owner. Yeah. I don't know how you would know that, but so tell me, other than some of the things we've already talked about, what are some of the tax advantages that business owners probably forget to take or overlook?
So guys like yourself who are running like a pretty large multi-op, and how many employees do you have now? 10, 15?
I think currently, I might cut payroll for 18 1 week, 20 1 week. It varies, but
and so my I wish there was like like italicized font so people know I'm being like sarcastic on Facebook.
I got the snarkiness, but listen, behind every joke there's a hint of humor, or else it wouldn't be funny. So it led me to ask you this question.
So when you have a multi-op like yourself and everybody's W-2, if you had a 401k for the business, you would get yourself at least a $19,500 deduction if you chose to max out. So you're putting $19,500 of your income into the plan. You're also receiving tax deductions or tax credit to start the plan for the business, right? So, there's costs involved with opening it. Those are tax write-offs. The money you're going to give to employees, if you offer a match, that's a write-off. So there's there's ways to reduce the income, and I'll just say for Elite, just because I know you, for Elite's top line by offering a retirement plan. Doesn't mean that the employees have to take advantage of it, but by simply offering it, there is certain tax advantages offered to you. And then on top of that, as the owner, we could structure in ways to get you bigger deductions than just the 19.5. So like I had mentioned at the top of the show, you could add like cash balance or a defined benefit or a pension or whatever on top of the 401. So if you're like, hey, Dan, I got to put 70,000 away this year. Well, okay, we could do that and show you the ways to do it. So when you're running a larger multi-op, that's like I mentioned at the top of the show, the 401 is the way to go versus just an IRA or a SEP or anything like that.
Okay. I didn't know if you were referring to things like I don't personally lease a vehicle through my company, but I know certain people do. And I've never.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that stuff your accountant will tell you, hey, buy a car, buy some equipment. But more often than not, we'll deal with businesses that to the point of buying trucks or cars or something, you can only buy so many cars to get a deduction, right?
Right.
But when you have a retirement plan set up, you can do that every year and you're saving for yourself rather than just finding stuff to buy.
Okay, cool. So I've got one last question for you, but do you have anything else that you think I've overlooked that I haven't gotten to?
Listen, I think without diving into the weeds, I think we've done a perfectly fine job of 30,000 foot view. And again, if anybody has questions, just reach out.
So in the last 2 minutes, explain cryptocurrency.
Who knows?
I don't get it. I've had people sit down and explain it to me, and I still don't get it. It's my limited intelligence, I'm sure. But
listen, I own.
Are you invested? You own some, right?
I have some Ethereum. I have some it's like play money.
Have you made money off of it?
Yes. I don't know why or how.
Made money, or is it just paper? Have you actually extracted money?
Yes, I'm going on a bachelor party Friday and it's paying for the trip.
So you're going on a bachelor party Friday, and your investment in cryptocurrency is paying for that trip.
Listen, I think it's a perfectly fitting analogy that my gamble on crypto is going to pay for my gambling in Vegas.
Makes sense. Makes sense. If I was interested in getting into the cryptocurrency game, what would you recommend? Obviously, play money. You shouldn't invest the rent in this.
Yeah,
but if I had $1,000, I just wanted to throw at a silly idea. How would I do that?
Coinbase is where you would go to open up an account. I think that's like the most secure place to do it. Personally, I don't want to even say I know anything about it. It's literally just I'm putting it on.
I'm asking you. You're not giving me advice. I'm the one asking you. And
like I said, the thing with crypto is it's not regulated. So like somebody in my position, my guess is as good as yours.
Gotcha. Okay. So I shouldn't have asked. You're being evasive because I shouldn't have asked. I got it. Okay.
It's totally fine. Like I said, I own it. I don't understand how it works, but I know it seems to be the future.
Yeah. I thought Elon Musk might explain it when he was on Saturday Night Live, but if anything, he had fun with it. I don't know if you saw it, but they had him on the news. They asked him to explain it, and didn't
he say it was a joke or something?
Yeah. I mean, he basically either couldn't or wouldn't. And
I think the best way to think about it is it's like a decentralized way for people to have access to banking services, right? So if you think about like a Bitcoin, which is, people are saying it's going to be the next gold, which I doubt because it's so unstable, but it does bring currency and banking to folks who typically don't have access. So in America, we're very spoiled where we can walk down the street and open a bank account. Right. But if you think about, people in like third world countries or in South America or something, everybody has a cell phone, but they might not have access to banking. Well, cryptocurrency kind of solves that problem. So that's the best way I think about it. It's just decentralized, unregulated. The unregulated, of course, brings risk, but I think it's going to be part of the future. Who knows how it looks, but it's here to stay.
And you are going to Vegas on it.
I'm going to Vegas on it.
Good for you. That's great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
on.
Mike.
I really do appreciate it. All right, everybody. I'm so used to not signing off without Joe, but it's been a pleasure. And by the way, let me tease next week. I believe I have a confirmation. I might have actually gotten it during this seminar or during this podcast that Alan Berg will be a guest on with Joe and I. If you don't know Alan Berg, how dare you? You should. He's a wedding marketing and wedding expert. And he's somebody that we have been longing to have on. We finally got our schedules to line up. So tune in next week for Alan Berg. And if you're interested in chatting with Dan Mueller, please reach out to him through Facebook.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.